2023, what a year for the New Zealand Warriors. Absolutely outstanding across the board. Great results on the field, outstanding crowds, massive fan engagement across the world. But what's 2024 going to look like? Let's take a look at our roster heading into what could be one of our most exciting seasons in the club's history. Hey team, welcome back into the Warriorholic. Thought I'd take some time to put out one last post for the year here. Share my thoughts on what the roster's looking like going into 2024 as a way to kind of close things up. I actually recorded this for the first time yesterday morning, was about to post it. Just as I was about to hit click, the AFB story broke. So I decided to come back and retake this with a refreshed mindset after that big announcement. Still a little bit of a shock, a little bit sad. Man, that guy's the cornerstone of our pack, but at the end of the day, that's part of the game. I wish him well in his ventures at the Sharks, and I really hope that Cappy and Webby, Cam George have got a cool plan in place to fill that gap over the coming months. So I want to go through the 2024 roster as it sits, give you guys a bit of an insight into what we might be able to expect, who might be leading the way in each position, how much depth have we got. A few interesting surprises there, I think. But so in order to break this team down, what I've done is on the Warriors site, they don't actually list who their development players are at the moment. So they've got about 37 players listed on the Warriors homepage there when you click on teams. The majority of them have obviously made up from our first grade team, which I think we've got about 29 players signed up in our 30-man squad. So that's our first grade team. We've got a bunch of guys in there who aren't listed as development players, but the only place I can find it is Zero Tackle has a list of 8 development players. Plus there's one extra guy listed on the website that isn't on Zero Tackle, who I believe is on a development contract. So I'm going to include those guys, plus 1 or 2 extra New South Wales Cup boys who I think could do a job if they were called on if we had a bunch of injuries. So I'm going to go through position by position, see how much depth we've got there, what our top team might look like, and see how excited we can get. Is this going to be our year to finally go that 2 steps further and get our debut premiership? So let's start out with the backs. At the back, my man Chance Nickel-Clogstead, no question there. He's our starting fullback, and I don't think anyone's going to debate that. What may come up for debate is who follows him if he goes down with injury. We've got Tane Tuaupiki there, and we've also got RTS. RTS, a world-class fullback in his own right, but signed at centre, and I believe that we're going to focus on developing him as a centre. The workload that he used to put in at fullback I don't think is sustainable at his age, so I think that's why they're looking at him as a centre option, and we know that Chance has got a few years left at him, delivering at that high work rate. So my instinct tells me that Tane Tuaupiki is the first drop. I think that kid is a X-Factor player of the future. He continues to lead the New South Wales Cup and the year before that Q Cup with tackle breaks and really high up there in the line breaks. So he's got a completely different game to Chance, but I think he's got a lot to offer. So I'm hoping we use him as the first drop. We've got to keep showing them there's a pathway for him because we'd hate for him to leave the club right now. So I think in order at the moment, you're looking at Chance. First drop, you're going down to Tane. And then you've got either RTS or Dallin, who did a really good job there in the couple of games he filled in early on in the season. Actually surprised me how well he went. I think that was kind of the trigger to turn around his season. It was pretty rough at the start with that calf injury. He struggled a little bit in his first game and a half or so back there on the wing. But after he switched to fullback, he kind of found a new light. So I think he's a genuine option there at the back. And the other one for me is Setu too. I watched him play a bit of fullback and cup this year, and I really like the guy. He's very versatile, he's very quick, he's robust, and he's very solid. He's got a large amount of experience for a New South Wales Cup guy. So, if he had a bunch of injuries, I think he could come in and fill a spot there at fullback if he had to. So overall, looking at the depth, you're never going to get more than, a couple of world-class fullbacks in any squad. And I think we've got 2 in Chance and RTS, and we've got a potential superstar in Tane Tuaupiki, and we've got a very capable backup there in Dallin. So I'm going to give us an 8 out of 10. As far as our depth at fullback goes, I don't think we could ask much more. We might not have those X-Factor superstar game breakers like Reece Walsh, but I don't think that's our game at the moment. We want that workhorse. We want that guy in charge who takes those big hit-ups, often two hit-ups a set, to take the pressure off our middles there. Rock solid at the back, really beginning to develop his ball-playing ability towards the end of last season. So I'm more than happy with what we've got at fullback there right now. So on the wing, we've got Dallin, first choice. He's your man. Daly M, winger of the year. Warriors try scoring record after playing 2/3 of a season, so no question he'll be on the right wing again. The left wing, you'd imagine Montoya will get first chance there, given he was the incumbent and played every game last season. But Ed Cossey did an awesome job when he came into the side in the early season when Dallin was injured there. He's looking amazingly lean and fit for a big fella his size. Looking at him in preseason here, talking to him last year, he's determined to get himself into that regular spot. So a lot of competition there out of those two. I've also included Ali Lautea here as a potential wing option. Maybe one way to ease him in there with such a congested midfield. I'm not sure. The other two we've got here is Sanele Alcosetino. Hope I've said that right, brother. Who I notice is on a development contract. I honestly don't know too much about him, other than he's a very big boy at about 1.85 and 112 kgs. So probably a sort of Ed Cossey kind of very large, smash him and bash him up kind of winger. No idea about the pace, to be honest. And then you've got Sio Kali, who I'm not 100% sure if he's on a development contract, but he is on the top page here on the Warriors site, which would give me an indication maybe he is. He's not quite so big at 1.85 and 95 kgs. So I don't know too much about those two, but they're obviously seen as an option if they're up there listed on the top page and in there as development players. The other guy I've included here is Setu too. I think like with fullback, he's a very comparable player. He's got good speed and he'd do a job if he was called upon. So overall, I'm giving us an 8 out of 10 for depth because you've got a world-class winger there in Dallin, and I think you've got two very comparable backups there in Montoya and Cossey, and some really good prospects coming through. The only thing that's probably my area of concern is lack of genuine pace. I know Dallin's top speed is as good as a lot of wingers in the comp, but whether that's, get a break from your own 5 metre line and no one's even going to look like catching you fast, I'm not too sure. That's something I feel like we could add. Other than Luke Metcalf, we don't really have that blistering pace, but hey, we've definitely got that ability to use our back three with Chans and our two wingers to carry that ball, do a lot of work for the forwards, which I think is really important to keep up the speed and intensity for our middle. So overall, I'm pretty happy. I'm really curious to see how these two young fellas go. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on them in Cup in 2024 and be excited to see if they do get a chance at some stage. But that would probably only come at the expense of injuries, which we're not looking to get any. So maybe they don't get a chance. Centres. This is interesting. Going back a year or so, it was always one of my biggest areas of concern, an area I was always hoping we'd recruit on. But with the step up from Rocco Berry and Adam Pompey in 2023, and the return of RTS now to play in the centres, I feel like we've got some genuine depth. We saw a very competent debut from Ali Lautea. He's got some serious X factor there. Watching him in Cup this year, he's definitely a level above Cup. We've got young Patrick Moimoi, who played SG Bull this year and a little bit of Cup. He's on a development contract. If you haven't seen him, just imagine Joey Leilua. Looks like him, plays like him, but a lot more consistent. And Ed Cossey is actually a centre. He said himself that his long-term goal is to get back into the centres. So without having, origin class or world-class Joey Manu type centres, I think we've developed some significant depth there. To the point I think I'm going to give us a 7.5 because we're seeing that we're developing our centres as more ball players, able to position their outside backs to score the tries. Whereas some clubs you'll see the highly X factor running centre types who are scoring a lot of tries themselves, and I don't mind that. It means we score a lot of tries out wide, which makes it difficult for our kickers. But hey, I'm much more comfortable with where we sit in the centres now than we did a couple of years ago. The question is, how patient are those guys who don't get a shot next season, who is it who's going to step up and partner RTS in there. I'll talk a little bit about who my guess is for round one in a moment when we get to that point. So then we get into the 5/8s. Luke Metcalf, Tamati Martin, Chanel Harris-Tavita, Dylan Walker, Ben Farr, who's on a development contract now. I thought he really developed his game in the Cup this year. Initially, I thought, there's not too much about him that excited me, but shit, he developed. He's got some great skills, very calm. I don't think he'd look out of place when he eventually gets his chance in first grade. Not on development contracts, but I've included Aiden Auckland here. He's another guy, very versatile. He played fullback, he played halves, he played hooker, coming off the bench, playing like a Dylan Walker kind of role. Very versatile and a very calm head. So I think he's a guy who could come in there and do a job if he had a whole bunch of injuries. And Paul Roach is actually listed as a 5/8 in the New South Wales Cup team. So he's obviously played a bit of halves there, although he's playing more in the hooker at the moment. So I've only given a 7.5 because we don't have that one guy who stands out as being a genuine first choice. Everyone's going to pick him 5/8. But we've got three genuine class players there who, if they took the step up in 2024, could become that person in Luke Metcalf, Tamati Martin, and Chanel Harris-Tavita. I've included Dylan Walker, but he's just a backup option for me. I really hope we don't need to use him in 5/8 in 2024. For me, Metcalf, speed, X factor is his point of difference. Struggles a little bit to connect with the guys outside him. Seems to be his first instinct is to run. He doesn't often look outside before he goes. But that X factor is a real point of difference. Tamati Martin, it's that calm head, the effort areas. Like if you watch his early games last year before he got injured, he was that guy cleaning up loose balls. He was that guy chasing back to make a tackle. His experience and leadership there. Chanel Harris-Tavita is an unknown for many people, having spent that year away. Look, I'm not going to hold it against him. I think it was great for him to step away and just refocus and realize what he really wanted to do, and it was to come back and be here. If he has a big off season, I have no issue with him coming into the 5/8 position. A lot of people want to focus on building him as a utility, but left foot kick, great defense. I think he offers a lot. I think he can develop into a long-term halfback for our club. I've always said that. You know, getting into his late 20s, once he gets that experience, I think he's a good halfback in the making. So I'll get on to who my first choice will be there in a moment. But yeah, I think there's a bit of depth there. But again, someone's got to step up and prove that they're world class, because if you're going to win a comp, you need two genuine class halves. On to halfback. SJ, best 7 in the comp for me last year. Should have been the Dally M winner, but shit, he came close. I've got Chanel here listed as a halfback because that's where the Warriors have got him listed. And like I said, I think he can develop into that. I don't think he's your first choice. But if something happened to SJ, I'd probably be most comfortable with him going into that position because of his kicking game and because of his experience. But behind him, you've got Ronald Volkman, who I really like. He's got all of the skills. He's got that confidence. He's got the kicking game. He puts people away. He's got the gas to go through a gap. He didn't really take his chances in first grade this year, but in the 2 games he started, I think it's tough to judge that because he's not a 5/8. He's a halfback. And playing outside a guy like Sean, who dominates the game, it was pretty hard for him to find his mojo. But in both of those games, he delivered a big play, either setting up a try or scoring one himself, which shows to me he's got something. He didn't really step up in that one start he got against the Titans at the end of the year, but that was off the back of a forward pack who got out muscled. Always going to be difficult. I think he's got all the attributes. Size may be the one question, which means he's a real target in defense. I'm not sure. How patient is he? Genuine long-term option, but who knows? You've got Luke Metcalf there, who started at halfback in the first trial game, although he had the 6 on his back. So Marty Martin told us in the after game or post-match that Metcalf actually played 7. He aspires to be a 7. For me, I'm not 100% convinced that's his best position. running 5/8 fullback or a utility high impact guy for me. Use that speed. But who knows? And I've also included Auckland here because he's listed as a halfback there. And again, he's another calm head, but you'd have to get pretty far down the injury list before he got called in. So I've only given us a 7 because behind SJ, there's a big gap down to the next person out there. SJ remains fit. We're as competitive as anyone. If not, who's going to be the next person? And this is a question that sort of sits in the back of my mind with the way we're going to use AFB's cap. Do we spend 500-600K on a solid but not world leading prop? Leave that little bit of cash there and stay in the market for that really experienced halfback who may come onto the market as SJ looks to retire. Who knows? I doubt very much whether he goes 2 more years. So you've got a choice. You take a hit and take a step back and try and develop one of these guys, or you buy someone in like the Broncos did with Reynolds. Really no idea which way Webby and Cappy are thinking. So, yeah, for the moment, I'm going for 7 and just praying that SJ stays fit for every round next year. Getting into the props. So I'm going to assume, based on the news yesterday, AFB is here for 2024. I still get an inkling if we sign some kind of replacement who can come in 2024, maybe he goes early. But I'm backing the fact that if he stays, he'll play his ass off. Anyone who thinks that he's going to go in there half-ass is dreaming. The guy is too competitive not to, so he's just starting prop every day. Mitch Barnett's going to start with him for me. Then you've got Buntiafa, Tomali, Jazz Tavanga at a stretch. I don't think you normally want to start with him. Marata Niakorea and Zion Mayu, who's been promoted to a development contract and extended out. If you get behind Mitch Barnett and AFB, there's a bit of a drop down, and I think that's where everyone sort of looks at the lack of depth. However, we have got a lot of competent players there who can do a job, particularly in a bench role. But it's who gets those meters after AFB leaves. You know, my inkling is that we may see Marata develop into that prop. I saw Fonzie post on X today that he's actually the same size and 2 kilos heavier than James Fisher-Harris. So if we put a little bit of different kind of muscle on him, focus on developing him as a prop, and if he's happy with that, who knows, he could be the next James Fisher-Harris. But yeah, I really like the look of Zion Mayu. Just his aggression, his speed, his ball playing ability, his footwork. So much excites me about a guy who's only 20 years old but dominating in cup. Really curious to see how he has an impact when he finally gets a shot in top grade there. So overall, I'm giving us a 7 because, again, we've just got that drop down from our top level guys to that one below them. But Marata could step up and fill that gap in 24. Who knows? Still a bit of a question mark for me, though. Hooker. Wade Egan, one of the top hookers in the game for me, probably top 3, top 4 worst off. But head knock issues are a real concern. A solid backup in Freddie Lussick, but he's off contract from 25 and hasn't been extended. Does that mean he's looking elsewhere? Does that mean we don't see him as a genuine option? Few questions there for me. I like him. I think he's continuing to develop. A few years ahead of him to develop the craft that Egan's got as far as ruck manipulation goes, but there's a lot to like about him. Etuate Fukovka. Sorry, man, I always get your name the wrong way around there. Very similar to a place called Fukuoka in Japan. For those who don't know them, he's been promoted to a development contract, played SG Ball this year, former rugby union halfback, got an amazingly crisp past. Reminds me of Piriwepu, if you're talking rugby terms, talking hooker, build-wise like Havili. Very big boy that could probably develop into a hooker/rock role. Kind of, similar in the mold to Brandon Smith. All of the skills, he's got a kicking game. He's got the ability to run over the top of guys. He's got that little subtle step. Really stood out to me in the early season. I think he got a couple of games for Cup as well. So he's a very exciting prospect. Whether he's developed as an out-and-out hooker or as potentially a 14, I'm not too sure, but he does excite me. And then you've got Paul Roach, who made his debut last year or this past season against the Titans in a losing team. I thought he held himself up admirably. Reminds me a lot of his brother. He's a very solid backup as well. But again, like with many of our other positions, there's a big girth of ability when you get past Egan and drop down to the next rank. Do we invest in developing these guys? If something happened to Egan, do we have to recruit someone until a guy like Fullback gets to the point where he can be a regular starter in first grade as Freddie Lussick, the guy? Plenty of questions. But exciting to see you've got that depth there as we go into 2024. Edge back row. This is probably one of the positions I feel the most confident in. Kirk Capewell, Jackson Ford, Marata Niakore, Jacob Laban, who's been promoted to a development contract, Lika Halasima, who's been promoted to development, and Sifakula, who may be more of a natural 13, long-term option to replace Tohu, but he's also capable of playing on an edge and listed as an edge on the Warriors homepage. I think your top three there are as good as anyone in the comp. Potentially, we're missing that big, massive ball-playing, kick-out kind of edge-back rower. But I like the way we've got big-minute players who do a lot of work on defense, and we do a lot of our running work through our middle forwards. And I think those three in Capewell, Ford, and Niakura fit that mould nicely. Who takes the starting two roles out of those two, I'll get into in a moment, but I really like what I see from Jacob Laban, Halasima, young kid, he's still only in his teens, and Sifakula. After his debut, where he got a little bit of a head explosion, shouldn't have got that 10 minutes, but shouldn't have clipped Nathan Cleary. When he went back into cup before he got injured, he looked like a man amongst boys. He's definitely a little bit above cup, and we saw, Webby identified him early on as a prospect, so he gives me a lot of hope as well. So I'm giving us 8 out of 10 there, other than that really big ball-playing body that we don't really have, but maybe that's not who Webby's looking for. We're looking bloody good. Into lock, obviously Tohu's our first choice there, world class. A couple of years left with him. Jazz is a capable replacement there. Dylan Walker, I don't think you want to start him and play 80 minutes with him there, but he's definitely capable of filling that spot really nicely during a game. Sifakula, a lot of people are seeing as the potential heir to that crown. Kalani going, very capable. Not the biggest guy, but he definitely did a job in a losing side there when he got his debut this year. He's experienced, he's older. But Tanner Stowers-Smith, not the biggest guy in the world, but man, Trevor Gilmester type of hitman. His defense is, man, he can knock some people over considering how, he's not very tall. He's got the thighs of two people. So I'm really curious to see how they develop him. I see him more as a really high impact bench player rather than necessarily a starter, but good to see him get bumped up to a development contract, with some people talking he was potentially leaving in the off season. So 8 out of 10 for me here. I think we have got the depth there. There's a big drop down from Tohu, but you've got you've got first grade quality players to come in behind him in Jazz and Dylan and Sifakula. So let's take a look at what I think will likely be the starting 17, as long as there aren't injuries, coming into round 1 against the Sharks. Go Media Stadium, I'll definitely be there. With a couple of players I think I want to be there, but whether they will, I'm not sure. So getting into the backs here, CNK picks himself, not too many questions. Montoya, I think, gets a nod as a starting winger on the left. Be a lot of questions about that, given his defense last year. But as I said, I don't blame that all on him. It'll definitely be something we're working on, that left edge defense this year. But I think having played every game in 2023, he'll get the starting nod there, but Ed Cossey right in behind him. I'm going for RTS on the left edge. I think we need to add some attacking ability there. His experience, his defense, he'll be able to coordinate things there well. If we can get our left edge smoking the way that our right edge was going last year, that makes us so much more of an attacking threat. I'm going for Berry. Really tough call. Adam Pompey had an outstanding season, played every minute of every game, developed his craft throughout the year, dominated a lot of really good quality centres. But for me, it's just not wanting to break up that combination with Rocco and DWZ. I really like Rocco's defense, his micro skills, his ability to put people away. So he gets first shot at me, but followed very closely behind by Adam Pompey and Ali Latoa. And then obviously Dallin picks himself on the right edge there. I'm giving Metcalf the initial starting position here because I think that's who Webby goes for. But I'm torn. I'm firmly in the Chanel camp. I just like the fact he's played a lot of footy with RTS. I love his left foot kick. I love his defense. I just think he's got a lot to offer. But my instinct says maybe they'll go for Metcalf because of their X factor and speed. No question, SJ starts if he's fit. And for the forwards, AFB, obviously his first pick if he's there. Egan and Barnett, they're going to be your first choice if fit. I've gone for Capewell on the left. I think you'll put a great combination together with RTS. Those two will solidify our defence. They're both creative. Unlike Montoya, see him getting a lot more tries in 2024 if he is the one out there. And I've gone for Capewell on the right. The reason I've gone for those two is they both play 80 minutes, and if you can get them to play high-intensity 80-minute footy, it means you can use Marata and, focus a lot more of your bench rotation on the middle, which keeps those guys fresh, impactful and competitive, and gives us a really strong finish in the back end of games if we've got fresh middles to come on. Tohu picks himself a captain at 13 there. A little bit of conjecture here around the bench. I think Walker picks himself. But the key issue for me is what you do about hooker cover with Egan's tendency to get those head knocks. I really hope Walker spends a bit of time working on his dummy half craft over the off-season. Having lost Zero, he really impressed me towards the end of the year with his dummy half work, but he's not going to be there. I'm going for Jazz, just that 1-2 punch with him and Walker. I love the energy that Jazz brings off in the back end of a game. He can turn the momentum, his aggression and his speed, particularly on defense. I think he's learnt to harness that in the past 2 years. A lot of criticism around how he went in the second half of the year, but you've got to bear in mind when you're coming off soft tissue injuries, you can't run while you're out. So he wasn't coming in at the fittest, but obviously Webby saw enough in him to not put him into cup, to bring him straight in there. So every indication he's looking fit, lean and ready to go. So I figure Webby's going to pick him. I'm going for near quarter as that middle/edge option there. I really want to see him developed as a high-impact middle, a Spencer Leniu kind of guy coming off the bench. We saw that aggression coming out from him last year. If he can learn to harness that, I think there's a really interesting option there. My first choices, I'd love to see Zion start on the bench there at prop. I'm so excited to see that impact he can bring, that level of aggression and the speed there. But you've got Lusick, Bunty, Ale, potentially CHT that people talk about as an option there. I don't think you can carry CHT and Walker on the bench. Too small. Lusick, maybe because of the hooker cover, and he is capable of playing that sort of light, running middle forward role. But again, that's a very small bench. So you do have Bunty as an option. But for me, if Bunty plays, he starts the first 20. He's not a closer, he's an opener. And that way you give, Mitch Barnett 60 minutes of footy there. That's the main question around it for me. Who gets that fourth bench position? I'd love to see Zion there, but hey, I'm not sure. What do you guys think? Where have I got it wrong? What am I dreaming about? Who would you definitely have in there? I'd love to see what you think. But all in all, I think we've got the roster. If everyone stays fit and everyone plays to their ability, if everyone levels up over this offseason like they look they're doing, I reckon we can go all the way this year. Panthers have got a bit of disarray there. They've lost some key players. They could lose Luai. Broncos have lost a couple of really key players in their roster. We've added to ours. If AFB stays, this could be our year, team. Up the mighty wires in 2024. Enjoy your off season. Enjoy your Christmas. See you again in 2024.